So I know what it's like to have a seemingly successful business on the outside, but on the inside to feel completely overwhelmed and miserable and stressed and bordering on wanting to just chuck it all in and kill it. And I want to have a bit of a frank and open conversation about this because it's a real common problem I see with agencies. And you're not alone feeling like this. And there's two common threads that I see come up again and again. On the one hand, there's the seemingly successful mid-six, even low six, or seven-figure, I even know of eight-figure and beyond businesses, and the owners who are just beyond stressed and they're miserable and they're not happy. And when they think back, they were happier when they were running it by themselves, and maybe they were doing more of the work or even less work, but they were happier then. And then on the other side, something that's extremely stressful for marketing owners is being stressed about not knowing where your next clients and leads are coming from, because that's your game, right? That's your business. And it's very upsetting or difficult to accept that as a marketing agency, you might not know where your next clients are coming from. And if you're stressed about sales and marketing, who are you supposed to turn to? Because if you turn to anyone in your family, they might say, well, you're a marketing agency. Aren't you supposed to know where you're going to get clients, or aren't you supposed to know how you're going to solve these problems? If you turn to your clients, they'll be like, well, you're obviously no good, so we're not going to use you. And if you turn to your colleagues, they might say, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. And I know that when we're online, we see people posting how they're crushing it all the time. And I want to share a very, very deep and personal story about me almost quitting the whole thing. And by the whole thing, I mean life, because of what a successful business was doing to me. So that's what I want to talk about. Explain you're not alone, maybe share a few of the things that I used to get out of it, because I'm literally hours away from going on a 2-week holiday. We're just taking a break from the company. Even more crazy than that, the entire company is taking a 2-week break. It's like a mandatory 2-week company holiday. We have like unlimited holiday time anyway for the team. If they want to take time off for whatever reason, they can do that. But this is like a mandatory holiday that we're all taking. So the entire company is shutting down for 2 weeks. And we're in such a better place than where we were last year. I'm also recording this just a couple of days before my birthday. So it's kind of an interesting comparison to see where I was last year, where we are today. And yeah, maybe share some insights as to how you might want to be able to get there as well. So this all started, I recognized this pattern. It was 2022 and I was just starting a bit of an international speaking tour. I had speaking stuff booked in America, a few in Europe and a few in the UK. And we were flying all over the place back and forth. And it's like speaking season is kind of like around September-ish time, summer, like early autumn, summer. That's like a really good time. That's when everyone does the speaking events. A lot of these have been booked in for months. And on the surface, it looked like I was absolutely crushing it. We had a mid-6-figure coaching company. So you have coaches who just like don't ever make any money. That wasn't us. We had a sales team and a coaching team and a media team and a production team. We had an IT department. I think there were about 18 people on my payroll at one point. We were doing tens of thousands of dollars a month for coaching. And then I had this speaking tour, and I think I just published Sell Futures, Not Features, and that had like a shoot and a launch, and that had a course and software and stuff. And I was invited to go out, and I've never shared this story before, this particular story. I've never shared this before. And we went out to see my old mentor, a guy called Mark, and his wife Pat, who are now really good friends of ours. And we went out to see them in Montana, and we were driving where they live, and Pat is just this hyper positive, can-do attitude type of person. And I think everyone by this point had kind of noticed a little bit of a distance or a quietness to me. I wasn't my usual self. It's fair to say that I am, if you put the rock in front of me, I'm going to smash it up into pieces until you say stop. If I say I'm going to do it, it gets done. And there was a bit of a distance to me and a bit of a reservedness to me that people had picked up on. My wife had certainly picked up on it. My mum had picked up on it. And Pat was like, oh, you must be excited about this tour. I can't believe I'm sharing this. This is insane. And I said, I am, but I'm going to go up and speak in front of a bunch of people. And I'm going to stand on a stage, or in some cases a swimming pool. And I'm going to stand up and I'm going to tell people about how successful I am and how they can also be successful if they follow what I've done, and I'll give them some advice. And the cold, hard reality is that I got there by luck. I was born in the right country at the right time. I'm mixed race, but predominantly in a relatively wealthy, middle class, mostly family. I'm a man. I think that comes with certain advantages. I, had a pretty good education. My mum read to me from a young age. My stepdad, when he took us in, we weren't rich or anything, but, we had stuff like heating. And we never really had to worry too much about money, and we could go on a holiday once a year. And now that was a big shift from where we were when I was a young child. That was difficult. Sometimes there wasn't food on the table, and sometimes bills didn't get paid, but that was for a different reason. But then we met my stepdad, so I had all these fortuitous, and I got on like a house on fire with my stepdad. I loved him very much. He passed away unfortunately quite suddenly in 2020, just before COVID. So I've had all this luck, and then it's lucky that I enjoy this shit, right? Marketing and stuff. And then it's lucky that I get it and I understand it. And it's lucky that I enjoy it. And it's lucky that I enjoy making money. And it's lucky that, frankly, I'm pretty good with people. And for the most part, it appears like I'm confident. And I was like, I feel like I want to get up on stage and say, you shouldn't listen to me, because every instance of success that you can see of mine is either down to coincidence or luck. Anytime I've done something that's worked, it's been lucky, because I can assure you I've done 10,000 things that haven't worked. And I was in the right place at the right time with the right attitude. And let's be honest, I'm happy to talk. I'm lucky that I'm eloquent. I'm lucky that English is my first language. I'm lucky that I like talking about this stuff. I don't have massive hang-ups about my looks. I have acne and spots and scars and stuff, but I don't really care about it, so it doesn't prevent me from being on camera. I don't really mind looking like an idiot on stage, so I don't have that hang up. I've got all these lucky support systems around me. My wife is incredibly supportive. No one in my family has ever given up on me, ever. And I listed all these things that were basically how I got to where I am. And Pat said, I absolutely think you should go up on stage and say that. That might be kind of refreshing. And I didn't. I chickened out. The first time I got on stage on this speaking tour, I was basically, the majority of the things I was talking about were all based around the book, right? So when you launch a book, people like that because you've got lots of publicity around you. So, hey, we'll book Mike Killen in, and like he won't bring anyone to the event. I wish I was that popular and big, but you typically then do stuff based around what you've spoken around in the book. So it's all cohesive, right? And I remember saying to my wife after the first kind of speaking event, and I was like, if I have to do one more of these, I'm going to blow my brains out, right? And I'm sitting there, beautiful 5-star resort, crystal clear blue azure water, beautiful sky, like sandy white beaches, amazing food. I'm being paid to do this, and I was miserable. I wasn't happy at all. And it's because I feel I wasn't being true and authentic, although I hate the word. There was a truth that I was ignoring in myself. And you see this a lot. And I remember telling my friends and family, like, hey, I'm shutting down this coaching business that makes like $600,000-$700,000 a year because I don't want to do it anymore. And they were like, what the hell are you going to do? I was like, I think I'm going to spend more time on YouTube and, affiliate marketing and a few other bits and pieces. And they were like, does that pay as much money? And I was like, well, yes, it does. It can do. It won't do straight away. It'll be years before we get back to that level. And the closest I can reach with that analogy is, you'll see this a lot with chefs. And for those who know me, you'll know that I actually was a chef. That was my first job and first passion, and a mixture of a very bad shoulder injury where I dislocated and I couldn't use it. You kind of have to have two hands in the kitchen for the most part. That's not actually 100% true, because there are chefs like Michael Caine who only has one arm. But I couldn't hack that, and also I had a bit of a drinking and drug problem, and I couldn't really hack it at the times and stuff. And I was working in France at the time. But what you'll find a lot of the time is chefs will start in like a burger restaurant or somewhere local when they realize, oh, I like doing this. I like giving people good food. And then they work in like a more upmarket restaurant, typically under someone, where they'll learn a lot of the tools of the trade. They'll learn about restaurant management. They'll learn about menu creation, supply relations, all this stuff, plating, the pass, all that kind of shit. If anyone's watched The Bear, that's, my wife and I can't watch that because it's too reflective of our experience, right? And then after the mid-level restaurant or the restaurant where they work under someone, they open their own restaurant. It's a huge success. They go on speaking tours and they have books and they have programs and they're invited to masterclass. And then they realize they're miserable and it goes full circle and they open a burger restaurant or a taco van. If you've ever seen the film Chef, that talks about that. That whole process is exactly what happens. It happens all the time. I think he's fired in that film, but it happens all the time. They end up just thinking, I just want to open a sandwich shop. And that's what I realized. I wasn't miserable because I don't like the people. I don't like the work. There was something about what I was building that I just didn't care about anymore. And because I didn't care about it, I felt bad about delivering it. Because I felt bad about delivering it, I didn't want to sell it. And I struggled to, justify all of that stuff. And so if you're feeling miserable, it's a sign that there's something out of balance. And it might be that you just feel, I'm working too many hours for the money I'm making. I'm putting in way too much time and energy and effort and sweat and stress for the reward that's coming out of it. That's one of it. But the other side might be you're like, I actually am okay. We are doing okay. But the work you're producing doesn't feel like it's making a contribution. So there was this psychologist back in the time of Freud and Jung, so kind of the early 20th century, and he was a contemporary of Freud and Jung. But Freud and Jung have a very specific worldview, which is etiology. Basically the idea that what happens in the past affects how we are today. For example, if you have a rough childhood, you're lacked out in a certain way. And there was another psychologist whose work was so, at the time, controversial and powerful and went against that grain that hardly anyone's heard of him. His name was Alfred Adler, and he believed the opposite. He believed actually that people are driven by their goals. You could have two brothers, both with an appalling father. One of them goes on to do great things or is a success, and one of them goes and ended up following the same route as their father. And if you ask both of them, why are you the way that you are? They'll both say, well, if you knew my father, you'd know exactly why I'm like this. But they've both done different things. The event isn't what drives us, it's our interpretation of the event. And that's where Alfred Adler differs. He doesn't say the event is what matters, it's our interpretation of the event, and it's actually our goal. If we want to be a victim, we'll find justifications and reasons to become a victim and then act out to become a victim. If we want to be a success, we'll find justifications and reasons to be a success and then do things to become a success, right? One of his core principles is that happiness is nothing to do with your accomplishments or the things you get. If anything, accomplishments are the problem. This was my problem, is that, and I'm just trying to speak objectively, I was getting a lot of praise. A lot of people were saying, you're crushing it, this is great, your work is really good, you've helped me, you've helped the business, look how successful you are, oh my God, you're traveling a lot. And I reveled in it for a bit. It's a really nice stroke of the ego to be told how successful you are. But the mistake is that you end up believing that your achievements are tied to your value and worth as a human being. So therefore, your happiness is tied to your achievements. That's what a lot of people make the mistake of doing. They might not think about it in that structured way, but we do. We tie, ultimately, our worth and deservedness of being loved as a human being to our achievements. And that's taught to us from a very young age. We celebrate when someone gets an A. We don't celebrate when someone goes from a D grade to a B grade. The A is better. Even though that kid might have been getting A's the whole way through, which is no progress, I'm not taking that away from them, that's harsh, but the D grade to the B grade, even though that's a 1, 2, 3 grade jump, that's not as celebrated as much. And if we look around, that's how we then measure our value and worth as human beings. And then that's how we measure whether we are worthy of love. And that's difficult because I then thought, well, shit, I'm achieving all of this stuff. If it goes wrong, I won't be loved as much. Which sounds dumb, but I'll guarantee you, if you look into why you're feeling miserable about all this stuff, it'll tie back to a lot of these feelings of self-worth and love and whether we deserve love. But Alfred Adler had a different idea. He believed that happiness is tied to meaningful contribution. If you feel you are making a meaningful contribution to something, that is what creates happiness. And that was very difficult to hear, and it took years for me to fully accept that, and even now I struggle with that. But I want to challenge you, if you're feeling miserable, is it because you feel your achievements aren't worth much? And we can talk about imposter syndrome and comparison and consumption. I think the book, John Izzo's book, The 5 Thieves of Happiness, well worth a read if you haven't. It's quite short, but very, very insightful. And The Courage to be Disliked, which is by Ishiro Kirishima, is it? But it's based on Alfred Adler's work. I think I've got it up there somewhere, maybe not. But The Courage to be Disliked. But if you're feeling miserable, it's possible to turn it around. It really is. It requires some bold steps, and it requires letting go of some things, and it requires maybe letting go of your identity as being seen as an agency owner and being seen as doing good work or being seen as successful. But it's possible, and it can happen. And we did it, and now the whole company's about to take 2 weeks off, and everyone in the company is happier. Ask my editor who's watching this right now. I think she's happier. I think the team is happier. We're all less stressed, even though we have less work. Yeah, our revenue took a huge hit, and I'm talking like 10% of what we were making. It'll get back up. That'll be fine. You know, I've got no worries about that. But we feel better. Clarence herself, my editor, said to me, it's been a long time since I felt like it was you, Mike, producing videos. And so I hope that was helpful and useful. I'm supposed to have an end screen video, but it kind of feels like I'm not going to bother with this one. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments below. I'd love to know if you're going through something like this or experiencing something like this. And in the meantime, I will see you on another video. I hope you're well and know that it can change and get better. And I'm here to help if you need that, if you need a hand. And so is this whole community. And so I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.